Hi, Dr. Sheila, and welcome to my presentation on Black Lives Matter. I will be covering 6 things, so introduction, key goals, context within society, their organizers, methods and tactics, and their achievements so far. So the Black Lives Matter movement began in 2013 following the death of Trayvon Martin. The campaign was co-founded by 3 Black women, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, as a response to the police killings of Black people. The campaign began to grow as the atrocities committed against Black community continued, such as the brutal killings of Eric Garner and Michael Brown. The movement grew over the years, and in 2020, major protests were sparked at the end of May following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. A video showing a police officer kneeling on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes until he died went viral following his death, which then ignited the 2020 protests. Some of their key goals are to combat police brutality, over-policing of minority communities, put a stop to abuses committed by for-profit jails, calls for better training for police, greater accountability for police misconduct, reducing police department budgets, investing those freed up budgets into community social services such as mental health and conflict resolution programs, and also they're working on a voter registration campaign in Black communities. Let's talk about BLM within the societal context. According to the Pew Research Center, 60% of white Americans, 77% of Hispanic Americans, and 75% of Asian Americans are in support of BLM. And 86% of the Black community are also in support of the movement. On the other hand, in terms of Republican and Democrat, 92% of Democrats in office support the movement. However, only 37% of Republicans think it's a necessary thing. According to polls, about 15 million to 26 million people in the United States have participated in demonstrations over the death of George Floyd and others in June of 2020. These figures would make the recent protests the largest movement in the country's history. Now, every social movement has an opponent. In terms of Black Lives Matter, one of their most striking opponents has been the All Lives Matter. A lot of leaders have come out and said that they believe that all lives matter and that everyone should be included. However, the problem with that is that when people say all lives matter, it derails the specific conversation about racism against Black people. This phrase is seen to dismiss, ignore, or deny these problems, and it shuts down the important discussion that surrounds race. The structure and organization of BLM. The Black Lives Matter movement operates on a decentralized network of activists with a lack of formal hierarchy. It is a chapter structure working together and being connected through organizers across the country and globe. The organizational structure that BLM challenges is the top-down, male-dominated leadership structure. Because it is founded by 3 women, the community-centered leadership model is widely referred to as a participatory democracy. This is where citizens are provided with the power to make political decisions on their own. Although there are a lot of similarities between the BLM movement and the civil rights movement of the 1960s, it is important to note that the civil rights movement of the 1960s focused on Martin Luther King's leadership. Like many other social movements, the focus was centered around a charismatic male leader. The director of African American politics at Columbia University believed that the movements dependent on charismatic leaders could become weak over time, leading to their demise. BLM is unique because the BLM activists have recognized the durability risk the movement will be open to if the leadership was to be in an individual or a handful of people. The Black Lives Matter movement more closely resembles Ella Baker's community-centered leadership model over Martin Luther King's. More specifically, her student nonviolent coordinating community founded in the 60s, whose campaigns were planned by the entire collective. Although Baker's efforts were related to MLK's wider movement, she emphasized greatly on grassroots organizing, and so BLM operates under the same similar principles. Methods of activism. There are a handful of methods that BLM portrays when they're showing their activism, but one unique method of protesting that they use is the die-in, in which protesters lie on the ground emulating corpses. This form of protesting is non-violent and yet so powerful in grabbing attention and forcing people to confront the consequences of violence against Black people. Social media is also a great driving force within this movement. Social media has become the center to the movement's growth for 3 reasons. It mobilizes both internal activities and new activities. It is built to connect groups and other movements, and it has allowed activists to control the narrative by posting personal experiences from protests and the like rather than relying on mainstream media. Through social media and Instagram posts, BLM has been able to voice their concerns. They have organized letter writing campaigns and have raised awareness through informative news-related posts. They also use emotionally invoking language and use their platforms as almost a news website where they get the news out and inform the people of what is happening around the world and the United States. This activism has resulted in 69% of Americans having conversations about racism with their families, 37% posting and raising awareness on social media, 9% contributing to organizations, and 7% of Americans expressing their opinion to public officials, and 6%, which is 15 million to 26 million of Americans, attending rallies and protests. Although they have achieved a lot, these are some of their achievements. Arrests were made and officers were charged. Derek Chauvin was convicted of 2 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter for the killing of George Floyd. Police reform is on the horizon. Racist statues have come down either through protesters or government has taken the initiative to take them down. Juneteenth was finally recognized, which is a holiday that is celebrated on the 19th of June to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. Companies take a stance against prejudice and take accountability for their racist past behaviors, and many others have come in support of the movement. Minneapolis lawmakers have vowed to disband the city's police department less than 2 weeks after George Floyd's death. Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York City has pledged to move funding from police departments to youth and social services. Last but not least, officials in Washington, D.C. and states including California, Nevada, and Texas have also banned chokeholds and reviewed police reforms. Thank you for listening to my presentation. They still have a long way to go, but it is a great start, and Black Lives Matter is a much needed movement, not just in America, but around the globe, as it not just started a conversation about racism within America, but also other parts of the world, such as Malaysia. When the whole protests were happening, Malaysia was one of the countries that people were looking into their own behaviors and systemic racism and institutional racism and addressing all of these concerns.